We did it. We came off our hiatus. We are here on the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. I am Matt Barrie. We are making history today. Well, why is that, Matt? Well, because we have a 12-team playoff for the first time in college football history that we're going to recap. And I want to start with this because everybody's going to have their opinion this morning. Everyone. I'm going to read the scores of the opening round of the college football playoff at home sites. It started Friday. Notre Dame, Indiana at South Bend. First time in Notre Dame history there's been a Friday football game. 27-17 all Irish. Keep that in mind because that one now seems to be the most competitive of the lot when we thought it was the absolute most boring game. Score number 2. Penn State SMU 38-10. Beat down. Score number 3. 38-24. Texas over Clemson. Beat down. Score number 4. I can't count this morning. I'm tired. Ohio State, Tennessee, 42-17. Those are the 4 scores from the opening round of the college football playoff. Now, throughout the weekend, and I was one of them, I was guilty of being one of them, I made the comment of people that didn't play anybody should be a legitimate discussion when it comes to playoff criteria, which is to say strength of schedule needs to be accounted for much more. I still believe that. As the weekend went on and blowout after blowout after blowout continued to happen, I finally settled on this one, and I can't wait to get Paul Finebaum's opinion on this. I've settled on this. 2 things can be true with the expanded college football playoff. I firmly believe this is where we are Sunday morning, 8:15 a.m. after the first round. 2 things can be true. Part 1, college football playoff expansion is amazing. It's exciting. It got us all fired up for home crowds, home atmospheres, and everything in between with hosting a playoff spot. It's great. It is absolutely great to have 12 teams in a playoff playing for a national championship, home sites. That's part 1. That's true. Part 2, which is something that I harped on pre-expansion, and it's even more evident today. It is crystal clear that in no world, on any year, in any given year of college football, there are not 12 teams capable of winning a national championship. There just aren't. Whether you like to admit it or not, whether you like to say like, oh, let's give this guy a chance, let's give the little guy a chance. There just aren't 12 teams that are capable of winning a national championship. I would say on any given year, 5, maybe 6. And at the end of the day, don't be surprised. We still haven't seen Arizona State play. I think the Sun Devils are good because alma mater. Who knows how they'll fare against Texas? Boise State has to play Penn State. Who knows how they'll fare against the Nittany Lions? They had the 80th ranked strength of schedule in Boise State, which is the lowest among any teams in the college football playoff. But it's going to come down to this. I said it coming into the college football playoff and expansion, and I'll say it now. Do not be surprised when we get to the semifinals that it's same as it ever was. It's going to be a collection of the same 4 or 5 teams that have always competed for national championships. Because at the end of the day, while 12 teams is really good for the sport because it gives us college football playoffs around the holidays, watch how this goes. Even when they're reseeded, there are not 12 teams capable of winning the national championship. And that's okay. And you're going to have blowouts like this. Even in the 4-team era, there are people saying, oh, there's too many teams. Well, yeah, we know that. In the 4-team era, there were blowouts in the semifinals right from the get-go. It happens all the time. You know what's funny, by the way, is maybe the BCS had it right all along because we've seen blowouts with 4 teams every year. And then you get to the national championship with the 2 teams. You had a great game. I'll give you one more example before we check in with Paul Finebaum. We were doing yesterday on ESPN, yesterday on ABC, we were doing the FCS playoff bracket. And we were doing the FCS semifinals. And the FCS, for those that you don't know or pay attention, it's really damn good football, by the way. Pay attention to it. There are 16 teams in the FCS playoff bracket. Let that sink in. 16 teams play for an FCS national championship. Yesterday, the semifinals on ABC. January 6th, National Championship FCS. Top seeded Montana State, number 1 seed, number 2 seed North Dakota State. You can play a bracket. You can throw 16 teams in. It's all well and good. But at the end of the day, seed number 1, seed number 2 are playing for a national championship. So as we recap this morning with Finebaum, my stance on it is simple. 12 teams, good for the sport. 12 teams capable of winning a national championship, no shot. Time now to check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate. So as we said, time to check in with Paul Finebaum. Paul, your reaction to what we saw out of the first round of the playoffs?
Well, it obviously helped to be at home, but it would have been a lot better if we had some real teams playing in the playoffs as opposed to a couple of frauds. And that's the disappointing part, Matt. And I know it sounds a little bit like crying over spilled milk, but the committee did a lousy job. And we as college football fans paid for it Friday night and all day Saturday. And I know the worst loss was Tennessee, but Tennessee did something to get into the playoffs. Indiana did nothing. SMU did nothing, and that's really what my biggest beef is on this Sunday.
So I had just gone on a rant about the playoff and what everyone's thinking about it this morning. There's 2 parts to it, but the first one I said, Paul, is during expansion, 12 teams, great, sounded good. Print the T-shirt, give us a bracket, fall madness for college football. That's great. We don't argue that. But here's where I sit this morning after all the opinions that we saw over the weekend on social media. There will never be, ever and ever. There hasn't been and there won't be 12 teams capable of winning a national championship. That's just never going to happen. So as long as we're okay with that, expand the damn thing to 16 if you want. There aren't that many teams capable of winning a national championship.
No, most years there's really barely 4, and maybe 5, and on that rare year you could even argue 6, as we saw last year. But most years there are not. So I don't think we should have been surprised by this. And by the way, I don't think I would have minded as much if a Miami, even Miami, had gone up to Penn State and gotten blown out, or South Carolina to Ohio State, or something like that. But it just bothered me to hear Curt Cignetti run his mouth, talking like he's actually done something. What he's done is he's beaten Purdue 66-0 and beaten a bunch of middling teams, but he hasn't beaten a good team. And in the 2 games that he had against quality opposition, he got his head taken off. SMU is a little different. I mean, we just like that story, not to rehash 3 weeks ago. But yeah, I don't think it would have been dramatically different because everybody had flaws. And I know Lane Kiffin is everyone's favorite pinata this morning, but at least he spoke his mind. I mean, he was speaking yesterday and Friday night as a college football fan. And I mean, the fact that, and I was in Austin and I didn't think that game was going to be particularly interesting. And the fact that the biggest moment of the day was a 4th down call by Dabo Sweeney to go for it to make it a 1-score game. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how bad it was. And while it could have been predictable, at least we could have seen some other matchups. And Matt, you follow college football at the tip of the spear more than anyone else. You knew that Indiana game wouldn't be good. You knew the SMU game wouldn't. The other 2, the 2 games on Saturday afternoon and night, they had a chance, but they didn't deliver. So, in other words, Ohio State, we read too much into one loss, but you can't just say, well, you have to throw the Michigan game out. I mean, it was only the biggest game of the year and they blew it. So they're capable of doing that again.
Yeah, and I'll touch on Ohio State for a minute. We were talking about the Buckeyes, and you and I have long said this here on the Matt Barrie Show, that they have the most talented roster in the country. It's not even close. Like, they are the most talented team in the country. And when they apply themselves with that roster, they can beat anyone. And I think Ohio State, and if Ohio State fans can't see this today, that I can't help you, because I think the Buckeyes are the most talented team in the country. If you can't accept this morning, Sunday, December 22nd, that Ohio State puts so much and too much on the Michigan game, then I can't help you. If you can't watch what happened last night and then watch what happened against Michigan, that you as a program and as a fan base, you have one of the best teams in the country. Focus on that and quit putting everything on the Michigan game, because all it's doing is causing you angst that you don't need. And by the way, with the bracket, the way that it's set up, Paul, drives me nuts that Oregon and Ohio State, who I believe are two of the top three teams in the
Yeah, well,
country,
absolutely.
have to go at it in the second round.
Yeah. No, I mean it's like okay, let's get Kansas City and the Bills meeting in the divisional round. I mean, it just makes no sense. So, yeah, I mean, for all the loudmouth Ohio State fans this morning, good for you. You earned it. You got to sit with your favorite cousins from Tennessee last night, uh, who did win. At least they won the invasion. I mean. I mean, and by the way, it doesn't really matter, but the idea that Tennessee could have almost 40,000 fans there just shows you how fragile Ohio State really was and may still be.
Because Paul, it's because of the one game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all it is. Like if they'd have beaten Michigan, I forget what the final score was. It was a pillow fight for the entire
13
game.
to 10.
Okay, so if they beat Michigan 13-10, that place is swarming with Buckeye fans last night. But instead, they put so much on that game. Ryan Day was on the hot seat, blow everything up. We don't have a talented team. And Marty Smith did a feature for it on game day about sitting at a bar with fans talking about it. And one of them said, I forget what Ryan Day's record. Let's just call it 84-4 in his career against everyone else but Michigan. This guy said, "Well, I'd rather be 4-84 with the 4 wins being against Michigan."
And Matt, let me make this clear. Matt Barrie asking me or somebody else talking about Ryan Day, we didn't invent that. You people did. And we saw living proof of it Saturday night, as Matt just laid out. So don't blame it on us just because you beat Tennessee, which I don't even know where to go with them, and I really don't care at this point because I think most reasonable football fans knew that they were going to struggle in that environment, just like they've struggled in every other environment this year, other than Vanderbilt, where they had more fans. So that's just a flaw in the Tennessee system and the maturity level of Nico, but yeah, I mean, I've never seen more people running their mouth today that were probably calling for Ryan Day's firing in that bar Friday night.
So I do want to hit on Tennessee because you're right up against it there in SEC country. That was the conversation after Indiana got thumped
Hmm.
and after SMU got thumped. Okay, because you can't here's what's going to happen, and I'm just going to get ahead of it now. You can't pick on Clemson because they won the ACC, they get an automatic bid. You can't pick on Boise State because they won a conference championship, they get an automatic bid. And you can't pick on Arizona State because they came out of the Big 12, they get an automatic bid. Whether they should have a bye, that's a different argument. I've already admitted that's wrong. They should not be getting a bye, but you can't pick on those 3 teams because they get the automatic bid with the conference championship. However, you can pick on the at-larges, and one of them being Tennessee. And the talk around the country was like, oh, 9-3 Alabama could go and beat Notre Dame. Well, maybe. 9-3 Ole Miss could go and beat Penn State. Well, maybe. And 9-3 South Carolina could beat all of them, and that's all well and good. But then 10-2 Tennessee just got their asses kicked.
Yeah. And again, I'm not apologizing for Tennessee being in. I mean, they didn't have a lot of great wins, but they did beat Alabama, which was at the time a top 5 team. So let's not get carried away. But if you're looking at to my question to any of you is if not Tennessee, then who else? I mean, Tennessee to me was in that kind of zone with Indiana that they really didn't have a lot on their resume, but they had something. And so, I mean, I don't know really what else. I mean, Tennessee just I mean, they got run over. And I think as somebody who does a talk show that primarily in the SEC, Matt, I heard from 100 Tennessee fans this past week, and not one of them actually talked about what's going on inside the stadium on the field. All they wanted to talk about was, we're going to invade. That had nothing to do with the game. All that did was embarrass Ohio State for proving our point that Ryan Day was in more trouble than you want to make out to be on a Sunday morning. But again, I can't tell you that Tennessee didn't belong in there because they at least have had something that nobody else that Indiana and SMU did not have. They had a quality win.
And look, I don't want to recreate the playoff because we're not even in the quarterfinals yet. So I'm not going to ask you what would you do differently. I think we all agree that the seed, like the conference champions, doesn't mean you automatically get a bye. I think you automatically get in, but you can seed them differently. We can do all that at a different time. Here's what I do want to ask you though. We go to the quarterfinals. I do want to move ahead because the first round speaks for itself, the scores. So then you go to the second round. You've got Texas, Arizona State. You've got Oregon, Ohio State. You've got Notre Dame, Georgia. And you have, why am I drawing a blank now?
Boise State, Penn State.
Boise State, Penn State. Yeah, obvious reasons.
I can see why you might have forgotten that one.
So let's go down. Let's start with Texas, Arizona State. The SEC still represented against the Sun Devils. A great story. How do you see that game?
Well, I mean, I like Texas, but Matt, Texas is just one of the hardest teams to wrap your arms around.
Correct.
I've been out there so many times this year, and I mean, Quinn Ewers may be holding up the MVP and the national championship trophy in 3 weeks, but we're still going to be questioning what made him so good because for all the good that he does, some of it gets taken away by bad decisions. But I think Texas's defense is still the calling card. They picked up a few more critical injuries. What they don't need is any more injuries on the offensive line because that has been their struggle all year long. But I was impressed. Just when you were about to wonder about them, they put up that goal line stand against Clemson. So I like their chances. I don't know Arizona State like you do. Obviously, I respect the job that they've done this year. It's pretty amazing. But I think it feels like it ends here.
Yeah, I would say Arizona State Camp Scadaboo, they've got a remarkable year. They're playing with momentum. Momentum's going to be halted for about 4 weeks. The only thing I do believe they have going for them, Scadaboo, the running back, no one believes in them, and they've had some time to rest with Texas a little beat up, but I'm with you. Arizona State's been a great story. I just want them to be competitive in that game at the Peach Bowl. Georgia, Notre Dame. We don't believe Carson Beck's playing. We believe it's going to be Gunnar Stockton.
No, he's not playing.
Notre Dame's won, 11 or 12 in a row since losing to NIU. That's a good-looking football game. Is Georgia in trouble at all?
I mean, I can easily see them getting in trouble, but I think we overuse the word resilient. It's kind of the new catchphrase, but nobody's been more resilient than Georgia. I mean, this team really did have the most impossible schedule. And when you consider it, that they had to play Texas twice, they were at Alabama, at Ole Miss, and had Tennessee at home. And the fact they only had 2 losses is pretty remarkable. So, I mean, I like Georgia a slight edge. You have to be worried about Gunnar Stockton. I mean, I can't tell you how many draw. We're fine. No, you're not. I mean, you lost a guy. It seems I don't know. I don't think Carson Beck is related to Quinn Ewers, but they've had the same type of year. I mean, it's been all over the place, and I think that's what some Georgia fans are gravitating to. But in talking to Kirby Smart Saturday morning on our show, he feels pretty confident, and I think he feels confident because he has ETN is healthy.
Yeah.
That's a big factor. He's not been healthy here. I mean, he is a dynamic running back, which we haven't seen very much of. He's the one that came over from Florida.
Yeah.
And their defense, with Jalen Walker and so many other, pieces, they can hold up very well.
I find stylistically, this game is going to be very, very, very similar in that Notre Dame, no bones about it. Love and the other running back, 24, they're going to line up. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be physical. The defenses are physical. We don't expect much out of the quarterbacks, but they can make the throw when they need. Gunner's the wild card. Riley Leonard's proven. I think this has potential to be a phenomenal game. The winner will get the winner of Penn State, Boise State. Kind of know which way that one's headed a little bit. Or no, is that right? I got to get this damn bracket.
I think you're right. I believe you're right.
I'm just going to pull it up right now because this whole bracket.
I'm
yeah, so the winner, Georgia, Notre Dame winner gets Penn State, Boise State.
Ohio State, Oregon. That is the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, so that's where we are heading into the quarterfinals. We can dig into Oregon and Ohio State. We kind of did. We saw that game in a regular season. It's a shame we have to see it again this close in the playoffs. But ultimately, end of the day, don't be surprised I'm optimistic. I love being optimistic about good football, Paul, but don't be surprised if these quarterfinals have a couple of blowouts in them as well.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, and on that point, there's not much you can do about it. And I talked to Greg Sankey about this issue on Saturday morning, Matt, and he admitted, listen, we had a good plan, and then a couple of commissioners blew it up. We had to go back into the room, and we had to have unanimous consent. So we ended up with what we got. And is it better than where we were? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm still not sure because for all the hype for Friday and Saturday, and I know this sounds anti college football, but it was a pretty forgettable weekend.
Yep. Paul, finally, I'm going to get you out on this one. Merry Christmas to you, by the way. I would like for you to give the people one big college football Christmas stocking stuffer of all the things we saw this weekend. Give them the one thing that they should remember going into the holiday week.
Well, I still think, even though the game was miserable, there was magic about Friday night.
Yeah.
The anticipation, seeing it. Yeah, I mean, do you get hung up on touchdown Jesus? But Notre Dame is the cathedral of college football. I mean, sorry, Alabama fans, it didn't start. It didn't start with Danny Chimes, and there was something about it. The weather's overdone, but that to me was one of the most dramatic moments of the college football season. Maybe one of the most dramatic moments we've ever seen because we waited so long.
Yeah.
Sadly, we got stuck having to see Curt Cignetti, his big mouth in Indiana, lay
punting in the fourth quarter. Yeah. Punting with 10 minutes in the fourth quarter down 20-3.
Just put a sock in Curt Cignetti's mouth. I mean, I applaud you being a brave new world guy, but you haven't backed up one thing you've said this year. You've beaten a bunch of nobodies, and next year you'll probably be, not probably, you will be sitting at home watching the playoffs.
There it is, your Christmas stocking stuffer from Paul Finebaum. Don't say he never got you anything around the holidays. We appreciate everything everyone has done this year for the show. Next time we talk, we'll be on the other side of 2025. Can't believe we're already here. So from us to you, happy holidays to everyone as we move on in the college football playoff bracket here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel and the Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate.